News out of Washington, D.C. An I-team has now confirmed that President Trump has named Andrew Boutros as the interim U.S. attorney for the Northern District here in Illinois. A memo was sent to the office here in Chicago announcing the appointment. Boutros is a former federal prosecutor turned white-collar defense attorney.
That Andrew Boutros has been tapped to become Chicago's next United States attorney.
The law has always been complicated and complex. But the world in which we live in, I think, has gotten more complicated with the passage of time and with technology.
Andrew Boutros on a video for his former law firm where he was regional chair of white-collar criminal defense. He is now with the law firm of Shook, Hardy & Bacon with offices in Chicago and Washington, D.C., where he also handles government investigations. Legal sources tell NBC Chicago that Boutros will soon be named by the Justice Department here in Washington to become interim U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Illinois and nominee for the permanent top federal prosecutor's job here.
This afternoon, a federal jury returned guilty verdicts.
Chicago has been without a permanent United States attorney since March of 2023 when John Lausch left.
Things are really starting to heat up in Illinois, and it's looking more and more like legal action could be looming for Tiffany Henyard. Now, let's be real. I've said before that I'm not exactly thrilled to keep covering this ongoing saga. There are political scandals erupting all across the country. One judge allegedly even tried to off her boyfriend. Seriously, check that out. But a lot of you keep asking for updates on Henyard, so for now, I'm sticking with it. Let's set the record straight. Tiffany Henyard hasn't been charged with anything yet. But in the court of public opinion, her image has taken a serious hit. Trustees in Dolton have raised alarms over some highly questionable financial decisions. Multiple outlets have reported some, let's say, eye-catching spending choices. We're talking about fancy steak dinners, high-end travel, and even a fully loaded Chevy Tahoe, a vehicle that practically screams, "I want to look like I'm in the cabinet." Naturally, the big question on everyone's mind is, when are the charges coming? Because, let's be honest, when you see this much smoke, you start assuming there's a fire. Sure, an indictment doesn't automatically mean someone's guilty, but at the same time, the growing list of concerns surrounding Henyard is getting harder and harder to dismiss. Here's where things start to get really interesting. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois just got new leadership. The acting attorney has stepped aside, and now Andrew Boutros is taking the helm. Why does that matter? Well, Boutros isn't just another bureaucrat. He's local. He knows the political terrain of Chicago, and there's a good chance he's already aware of Henyard's situation. Boutros has a heavyweight resume. He's a former federal prosecutor, lectures at the University of Chicago Law School, and comes from a firm that specializes in government and white-collar crime. In other words, this guy is built for exactly this type of case. Now, with him in a key leadership position, the prosecution just got a whole lot more serious. Do you think folks like Max Solomon or Beau Brimley are ready to go toe-to-toe with someone like that? Probably not. And here's the icing on the cake. Both Senators Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth have confirmed that the White House has pledged to consult them before making any permanent nominations for the role. That's standard procedure. President Biden had actually nominated April Perry earlier, but her nomination got stalled in the process. So technically, despite someone currently acting in the position, it's been unfilled for most of Biden's tenure. There are a lot of moving parts, and the political tension is rising fast. Keep an eye on this one, because the fallout from Henyard's alleged actions might just be getting started. With a sharper legal team and more federal eyes on her every move, it's no longer just about headlines. It could be about handcuffs. For a bit of context, Senate confirmation of U.S. attorneys is usually a smooth ride. Most of the time, it passes through a voice vote or even unanimous consent. In fact, roll call votes haven't been needed for this process since 1975. So if Andrew Boutros gets the nod, it's practically guaranteed he'll be confirmed, especially in a city like Chicago, where political corruption cases are a dime a dozen, and if any senators actually try to block Boutros' confirmation, well, that would raise a lot of eyebrows. Now let's turn the spotlight back to Tiffany Henyard. What she's done, or more precisely, what she's allegedly done, has pushed political corruption to a level that's shocking even for Illinois. And with someone like Boutros now in charge, I have a strong feeling this case isn't going to drag on much longer. There's already an open investigation underway, and remember, federal agents didn't just knock, they raided Dalton's village hall. No SWAT teams or sirens, but they did leave with boxes of documents in hand. That's not something you ignore. It wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was a message, and a big one. What's even more concerning is that both Keith Freeman and former police chief Louis Lacey are currently under federal indictment. There's almost no scenario where they aren't cooperating with investigators at this point. These two men are in survival mode, scrambling behind the scenes, likely trying to negotiate deals that'll keep them out of prison. Freeman, in particular, knows where all the bodies are buried, and after being completely pushed, aside by Henyard, he probably has zero loyalty left. As for Lacey, things have been relatively quiet from his end, but let's not forget he's a former cop. The last thing he wants is to end up behind bars. It's pretty likely he's already talking, especially if doing so means shaving years off a potential sentence. When law enforcement insiders start flipping, the house of cards above them usually tumbles fast. And right now, all signs point to Henyard being at the top of that structure. But that's not all. A federal grand jury has already been impaneled and is actively reviewing evidence connected to Dalton, and maybe even Thornton Township. That means investigators are past the point of speculation. They're building a case, reviewing documents, and hearing witness testimony. And with everything circling back to Henyard, the noose appears to be tightening. So, what's the prediction? Here? Simple. Movement. And likely, very soon. With Andrew Brodas now officially heading up the U.S. Attorney's Office, every key piece is in place. You've got prosecutorial experience, deep local insight, and the institutional power to press forward. It's not just noise anymore, it's a coordinated legal effort, and Henyard should be very concerned. This isn't over. In fact, it might just be the beginning of the most intense phase yet. The groundwork has been laid. The players are in motion, and the federal spotlight is only getting brighter. Stick around, because things are about to escalate in a very big way.